very good afternoon to everybody. In continuation with our MCQ series, today we are going to discuss MCQs related to the disease schizophrenia. As always, after the series, if you have any feedback, any suggestions, you can put those in all the official WhatsApp groups, etc. So let us begin. The first question is differentiating features between neurosis and psychosis. So in psychosis, A, insight is preserved, B, there is lack of insight, C, personality and behavior is preserved, and D, none of the above. So here the answer is B, lack of insight. Now to revise the differences which we have already studied in between psychosis and neurosis. So these are old terms in which psychosis, there is lack of insight of the patient into their illness. These are more severe type of mental illnesses. There are also personality changes and disorganized behavior seen in psychosis. And in contrast, in neurosis, like for example, example of neurosis will be disorders like OCD and anxiety disorders where insight is preserved, at least partially. And personality and behavior is usually not that severely affected. Moving on. Second question. A patient presents with 1 month history of hallucinations and delusions. The patient lacks insight into his changed behavior. The likely diagnosis is conversion disorder, depression, OCD, and schizophrenia. Now, this being a very easy question, the answer is obviously schizophrenia. So, in discussion, what is conversion disorder, or as it is known now, functional neurological symptom disorder? As it is known in DSM-5, it is considered a set of disorders in which the patient comes with neurological symptoms, which can be such as hemiparesis, hemiplegia, or tremors, or pseudo seizures, and many other such neurological symptoms which do not confine to a known organic illness, and they do not present like the known illnesses, and we are not able to find a specific organic cause, and hence we label them functional. Secondly, in depression, the characteristic features of depression, the symptoms will be sadness of mood, loss of interest in pleasurable activities, weight loss, sleep disturbances, etc. In its criteria, there are 9 symptoms listed, out of which 5 are needed at least for 2 weeks. And then you can say that it is depression. In OCD, that is obsessive compulsive disorders, there are repeated intrusive thoughts, feelings or mental images which are known as obsessions, and to relieve that anxiety, there are compulsions which are compulsive actions or acts that are done so that the anxiety produced by the obsessive thoughts is relieved. And here the answer was schizophrenia. Why? Because the criteria for schizophrenia states that you need either delusion, hallucination for at least 1 month. It is 6 months in case of DSM, and it is 1 month in case of ICD. Moving on to the next question. Delusions are seen in all of the following except A, schizophrenia, B, depression, C, dementia, and D, conversion disorder. So what will be the answer here? B, conversion disorder. Now let us see the explanation. Schizophrenia, as you know, it is characterized by delusions and hallucinations, which are the primary features of this illness. But delusions are also seen in many other mental illnesses such as depression. So when delusions are present in depression, it is known as a more severe form of depression or psychotic depression. And what kind of delusions, if you remember, these have been discussed in the past. Delusion of guilt, nihilistic delusions, and delusion of poverty. Such delusions which are more mood congruent with sadness of mood are common in depression. Then in dementia also, dementia with behavioral disturbances, delusions can be seen. Mostly these are delusions of misidentification. There can also be delusions of persecution. Dementia, as you know, is long-standing cognitive disturbances. So these patients, they forget easily, and they might have misplaced their things, but they think that they have been lost or they are, stolen and like that. So such delusions are also seen in dementia. Conversion disorder, on the other hand, I just told you that it presents with neurological symptoms which do not have an organic cause, and here delusions are not seen. Moving on to the next question. The term dementia precox was coined by A. Freud, that is Sigmund Freud, B. Eugene Bueller, C. Emil Kraepelin, or D. Kurt Schneider. So what is the answer? All these names are important in the history of psychiatry and psychology, and here the answer is C. Emil Kraepelin. Let us briefly see the history of schizophrenia. Important names, if we go sequentially, is Benedict Morel, a French doctor. He first of all coined the term dementia precoce, which meant basically a kind of dementia-like illness which has a deteriorating course. Further on, building upon his work, Emil Kraepelin, basically he divided two different types of diseases. He said, in one disease there is an alternating course which is between manic and depressive illnesses, which he termed as manic depressive psychosis, and in another there is a progressively deteriorating course which he said was dementia precox, and at that time that particular term, it clubbed schizophrenia and many other diseases. Finally, going on further, Eugene Bueller coined the term schizophrenia. It is a division between the term skis, which means split, and phrenia, which means brain. And what he meant was the split between the thought process and the behavior of the people suffering from schizophrenia. Unlike the popular belief which thinks that it means a split personality, the schizophrenia term does not mean split personality. It is totally different disorder. That is disorder of multiple personality, which you will learn about in dissociative personality disorders, in dissociative disorders basically. Okay. Next question. The term schizophrenia was coined by, okay, now this becomes very easy because we have already discussed, A. Erich Moyer, or B. Sigmund Freud, C. Eugene Bueller, or D. none of the above. So answer is Eugene Bueller. Okay, he coined the term schizophrenia. Here we can discuss a few other important things that Eugene Bueller did. He is also known for the 4 A's of schizophrenia, which you might have learnt about. And he is also famous for giving what are called as the secondary symptoms of schizophrenia. Next, percentage of monozygotic twins with schizophrenia. So what this question means is, if one of the monozygotic twin pair has schizophrenia, what is the likelihood that the other pair will also have? So the options are 0.1%, B 1%, C 10%, and D consider it as around 47%, 47 to 49%. So what will be the answer? You might have guessed the answer is D 47%. So here let us discuss the probability of a person getting schizophrenia depending upon which particular relative already has a diagnosed case of schizophrenia. So the incidence in general population, that is, if we consider the entire population across genders, across countries and socio-economic strata, it is 1%. So among 100 people, 1 person is expected to have developed schizophrenia. It is 47% in case of monozygotic twins. So what from this you can gather is, it is not completely, a genetic disease. So there is definitely a component that genetic heritability plays a role. But in monozygotic twins that have completely 100% same DNA, yet the penetrance is only less than half. So it definitely has other factors that do play a role in its incidence and prevalence. Next, if you have a sibling, that offsprings of if both of your parents are affected, both parents have diagnosed schizophrenia, your likelihood of developing schizophrenia is 40%. If one parent is affected, then it is 10%, and it is 8% in case of siblings of affected parents. It is 8% if one of your siblings is affected. Sorry for the typo. Moving on to the next question. Biochemical abnormality in schizophrenia. So there are many theories, but which is the most prevalent? Biochemical abnormality. A, increased dopamine. B, increased dopamine and increased serotonin. C, decreased dopamine. D, increased dopamine and decreased serotonin. So what is the answer? The answer is B, increased dopamine and increased serotonin. So here we can briefly discuss what are the biological or neurotransmitter based theories for etiology of schizophrenia. So the most prevalent theory is what we say in the mesolimbic and mesocortical areas of the brain, there is increase in dopamine and serotonin levels of neurotransmitters. They are implicated in schizophrenia. There is also delineation of how increase in dopamine results in positive symptoms in the mesolimbic area, decrease in dopamine in the mesocortical area leads to negative symptoms, and such are the details of these theories. Moving on to the next question. The most commonly implicated neurotransmitter in schizophrenia. Now this becomes easy because of the last question. Is it A, norepinephrine, B, serotonin, D, dopamine, and C, dopamine, and D, GABA? So the answer is C, dopamine. Although many neurotransmitters, they are implicated in the causation of schizophrenia, the main ones being dopamine, then serotonin, and then there is glutamate. But here if you are asked to mark only one, then dopamine is certainly the answer. The next question is, which of the following is not considered as a first rank symptom of schizophrenia? A, auditory hallucinations. B, insertion of thought. C, delusional perceptions. D, compulsive act that relieve the tension. Okay, so the answer here becomes easy because of the odd one out. It is obviously compulsive act that relieve the tension, which are characteristic feature of OCD. But what are we talking about here? So here we are talking about a list of symptoms that were given by Kurt Schneider, which are known as the first rank symptoms of schizophrenia, because it was said that they are more likely to be, when they are present, the diagnosis of schizophrenia becomes more likely. Up until DSM-4, these symptoms were given an importance even in the criteria for diagnosis of schizophrenia, and their presence had a more relevance for diagnosis. But in DSM-5, all delusions and hallucinations have been given equal weightage. So let us go through the list of the 11 symptoms that represent Schneiderian first rank symptoms. So 3 are thought related, that is thought insertion, which means that the person feels that this particular thought is not his own, it has been inserted from outside. There can be thought withdrawal, in which the person feels that his own thoughts are being withdrawn from his brain and he has no control over it. And third is thought broadcasting, which is again similar to withdrawal, but here the person feels that his thoughts not only are being taken away from his brain, but they are also being broadcasted, such as on the radio or on the TV, etc. Next, we come to 3 types of hallucinations, and here mainly we are talking about auditory hallucinations. So they can be audible thoughts. First person auditory hallucination, which means that basically whatever I am saying, I am thinking, I am able to hear it as well. Then it is second person auditory hallucination, which basically means that the voices, they are commanding me to do something. Pick up this phone, or do this, jump from the bus, things like that. So voices commanding me to do something. And the third is third person auditory hallucination, which basically means that 2 voices, they are arguing, they are talking amongst each other about me, and I am able to hear them. Then 3 next come as delusion of control. 3 types of delusion of control, which are known as made affect, made volition, and made impulse, which basically means that it is not my own doing, but I am being forced to feel something like this, I am being told to do something like this, or there is an impulse to do, which is, it is not in my control, it is in external control. And finally, there are 2 separate symptoms, such as delusional perception and somatic passivity, which completes the list of Schneiderian first rank symptoms. And the next question is, schizophrenia is a disorder of thought, belief, memory or perception. This again becomes easy to answer because we have discussed so much about schizophrenia. It is a disorder of thought. That does not require much of explanation. Schizophrenia comes as a thought disorder because all its symptoms like delusion, etc., they are part of the disorder of thought section. Content or then there is other abnormalities seen in it are loosening of association, derailment, etc., which come in the part of form of thought disorders. So for the next question onwards, I will give to Sanjibani ma'am to continue the discussion.
Good afternoon. So the next question is, schizophrenia is characterized by all except A. Delusion, B. Auditory hallucination, C. Catatonia, and D. Elation. Before I proceed to the answer, I would like to say, like in all types of MCQs, in all types of multiple choice questions, there will be many options, and sometimes all the options might seem correct to us. But then we have to choose the option, that is least common. Like even if all the options seem correct, the least common option should be chosen. So that is a trick to answering MCQs. So the answer to this question is characterized by all except D. Elation. Now, since we have discussed so much about schizophrenia, we know that delusion and hallucinations are like the hallmark of this disorder. And catatonic schizophrenia is also a very prominent type of schizophrenia in which there will be catatonia, like maybe negativism, waxy flexibility. We'll discuss that further. Elation is like undue happiness, undue euphoria without any reason. It is most commonly seen in bipolar disorder mania. But that does not mean that in schizophrenia we'll never see elation or there will never be mood symptoms. But if you go by the criteria, DSM-5 criteria, then elation is not a primary symptom or one of the symptoms that we use to, diagnose schizophrenia. But elation is something which we use to diagnose bipolar mania. So, in this question, it is the correct answer. Like, it is not seen in schizophrenia. Now, the most common hallucination in schizophrenia is A. Auditory, B. Visual, C. Tactile, and D. Olfactory. Again, we have to choose the most appropriate answer. Like all this type of hallucinations can be seen in schizophrenia, but it is the most common type. And the answer is A. Auditory. That means hearing of voices or noises or sounds. Auditory hallucinations are the most common type of hallucinations in schizophrenia. Sometimes visual, olfactory and tactile hallucinations can also be present. Now in auditory hallucinations, as Dr. Pooja has already explained, like there may be first person, that is you hear your own voices. There may be second person they are commanding. Now you may be wondering, even if the voice is commanding or even if the voice is asking the patient to do something, then why is the patient doing that? Like suppose the voice will ask the patient to jump, like she gave the example, jump from the bus. But then why should the patient do that? I mean, logically, if somebody asks us, we will not do that, right? But you have to understand that in schizophrenia, the logical part of the brain is not working. And sometimes the patient is so much immersed in his altered reality, in his own reality, that in his reality, what the voice says is very important and something that he has to do. So it is not like a normal person listening to other person's advice. In schizophrenia, the logical part of the brain, the contact with reality is broken. That's why they follow the command auditory hallucinations. And of course, running commentary type. Like when you watch a cricket match, how there is a running commentary on the batting and bowling and fielding. In the same way, running commentary is heard by the patient. Most of the times it is not pleasant. Like it's not like somebody is encouraging the patient that you are doing very well or this is so nice. Not like that. The hallucinations are almost always negative. They will be sarcastic. They will be threatening. They will be abusive. And because of such hallucinations, the patient is always very disturbed and they are not pleasant. So that's why schizophrenia is such a, how do I say it, is a disorder with florid symptoms. Yes, visual, olfactory and tactile hallucinations can also be present, but mostly visual and like in India, visual hallucinations are also very common. Olfactory hallucinations, more than schizophrenia, they are present in if there is some lesion in the brain, in the olfactory region, then there will be olfactory hallucinations like smelling things that are not there. That is the meaning of olfactory hallucination. And also there is a kind of disorder, that is somatic disorder, delusional disorder, somatic delusional disorder. In that there is a delusion, there is this firm belief that bad smell is coming from my mouth or bad smell is coming from my nose. And because of that, patients avoid going out, they avoid being a part of a friend group or a family group. They keep to themselves. They're very, how would you say, reclusive. They become reclusive. Although it is not their primary nature, but still they become reclusive. So, we have to ask the patient that why you are not going out. Previously you were going out and, having friends. So what is wrong? Then the patient, after establishing rapport and all, he or she may say that how can I go out when there is this bad smell coming from my mouth or from my nose? And it's not that patients are imagining; they can actually smell it. For them, it is very real. So that is a kind of an olfactory delusion, because this delusion is olfactory hallucination, because this hallucination for them is very real and they will feel like this bad smell is coming, and it is very common in delusional disorder, somatic type. And also when you see such a patient, you should not just say, okay, this is a delusional disorder, let me prescribe some antipsychotics. Most probably, and maybe there may be some other organic cause like lesions in the brain, so an MRI is recommended. Tactile hallucinations. Tactile hallucinations is also a very interesting phenomena. It is patients will feel things that are not there. Like you must all have maybe have read, or it's an MCQ question, another question, cocaine bugs. Like if patient is abusing cocaine, then they feel like the bugs are crawling under their skin. So it is a very classic example. And also in delusional disorder, somatic type, sometimes the patient will complain that there are insects all over my body. They are crawling over my skin and in my hair, and I'm having itching, because secondary to that, these patients, they mostly don't come to a psychiatrist, because obviously if you feel like scratching and there is, scratching on your body or irritation, or you feel like insects are running on your body, so first thing you will do is go to a dermatologist. Nobody will think, wow, I have become psychotic, let me go to a psychiatrist. Nobody thinks that, okay? So they go to a dermatologist for these complaints that see insects are there crawling. The dermatologist, they do all kind of tests, skin scraping maybe, looking under a microscope maybe, and but they do not find any insects or any eggs or anything. So they tell the patients that no, there is nothing there, you go to a psychiatrist. So such patients unwillingly, like they come to us, and then we see that the dermatologist didn't find anything. So we tell the patient that do you really feel like that? Yes, we feel like that. So can you show me the insects? Some patients will say, no, I cannot show you, and some other, they will scratch something from their body. Like if you scratch your skin, some maybe skin remnants will come out. If you scratch your scalp, some scalp remnants will come out. And they will show that, and they will tell us, see, this is the insects crawling. And there is no way you can convince them that no, it is not crawling, because they can actually feel it, okay? For them, it is as real as, other sensations. So it is very real for them. So in that case, instead of trying to convince them, we give them certain medications, and we try to tell them that take these medications and you will feel better. They are actually hesitant, because why should I take psychiatric medications for a dermat problem? But since they have already tried so many dermat solutions and none has worked, so they take it, and fortunately it has a very good prognosis. After few days or weeks, they will come back and they will say, yes, I am feeling better now. And it is most happens in elderly patients, or middle-aged or elderly patients, and it has a good prognosis. So we call that delusional disorder somatic type according to DSM-5 diagnosis. So these are the kind of hallucinations I am discussing. They are not typically seen in schizophrenia, but since the question had this kind of hallucination, so I am just discussing in detail. Okay. Then the next question is, in catatonic schizophrenia, which is not found, A is waxy flexibility, B is automatic obedience, C is hallucination, and D is Gegenhalten. Gegenhalten is resistance to passive movements. And the answer is, anybody would like to say in terms? Right. She has answered right. So the answer is hallucination. See, when you answer a question in an exam, please take time to read the question properly, because suddenly you see schizophrenia and the first thing that comes to mind, schizophrenia, hallucination is there. So you might mark the wrong answer. So please read the questions carefully. These are the tricks to getting more marks in competitive exams. So in catatonic, this question is very specific. In catatonic schizophrenia, hallucination is not found is the correct answer. So what is catatonia? Catatonia, there are 12 symptoms. If three or more of them are there, then it is catatonia. Stupor, catalepsy, waxy flexibility, mutism, negativism, posturing, mannerisms, stereotypy, agitation, grimacing, echolalia, and echopraxia. Stupor is they will respond only to painful stimulus, and this waxy flexibility will be there, like their body will be like how we can manipulate this wax. So in that same way, the patient's body you can manipulate their limbs and their legs and their body. So it will be, for a normal person, it will be like not possible to do that on a normal person, but in a schizophrenia patient we can do it. I wish I had a video. Maybe in some other class I will show you this. And posturing is having abnormal postures which are difficult, like you ask the patient that raise your hand, and then they will raise their hands and they will keep it for long time, or sometimes even spontaneously they will be sitting or standing in abnormal positions, which will really seem very uncomfortable to a normal person, but for hours together they will be maintaining that posture. Also, mannerisms are kind of a goal-directed behavior, like maybe repeatedly, touching hair or something like that. Stereotypy is non-goal-directed repetitive behavior. It is agitation. Grimacing is making painful facial expressions. Echolalia is repeating what the examiner or the doctor or another person saying, and echopraxia is copying the movements or activities or body posture of the other person, like the doctor or the other person who is in front of the patient. Now we come to drugs. Atypical antipsychotics are all except olanzapine, clozapine, risperidone, thioridazine. Intern, would you like to attempt? Which is not an atypical? No? Okay, we'll go to the answer. It is thioridazine. Now, what are atypical antipsychotics? Like atypical antipsychotics are also called second generation antipsychotics. They block both the dopamine and serotonin receptors. So the brain has specific receptors for specific neurotransmitters. So dopamine and serotonin are the two main neurotransmitters implicated in the pathophysiology of schizophrenia. So atypical antipsychotics, they mostly block both these kind of receptors. And most common atypical antipsychotics are olanzapine, clozapine, and risperidone. They are very commonly used, also available in our hospital also. The first generation of the typical antipsychotics block only the dopamine receptors, and some typical antipsychotics are haloperidol, trifluoperazine, thioridazine. Now these antipsychotics, obviously the first generation came first and the second generation came second. So the first generation antipsychotics, it was like, we started using them from the 1950s. And after that, before that there was no treatment for schizophrenia, and serendipitously it was, discovered that this can be helpful in psychosis. But the problem with the first generation antipsychotics is that they have a propensity for causing EPS, that is extrapyramidal syndrome, the side effect. That is, there will be tremors and hypersalivation, increased salivation, and mask-like faces. Face will become mask-like because of the drugs, and the patient, the negative symptoms used to become even worse. Like the positive symptoms, hallucinations, delusion, they used to be controlled. But the negative symptoms like amotivation, apathy, avolition, they were not much improved, and in some cases they were even worsened because of this typical antipsychotics. Why did people use them? One, because there was no other option, and two, because those time patients were mostly kept in institutions, at that time were called mental asylums. So in asylums, if the positive symptoms are not there, like hallucination, delusion is not there, if the patient is not agitated, violent, aggressive, then it was somewhat relief for the doctors and the healthcare staff and for the family also. And because there was no other treatment and this was the only treatment and something is better than nothing, so this was used so that at least the positive symptoms were controlled. But this really worsened the negative symptoms of the patients. So after much research, then came atypical antipsychotics, because at the neurotransmitter level also research understood that not only dopamine but also serotonin is involved in schizophrenia. So the atypical antipsychotics was kind of like a big discovery for schizophrenia, because these atypical antipsychotics could not only improve the positive symptoms, they also improve the negative symptoms like decreased speech, evolution, apathy. Those symptoms were also increased, also decreased, also improved. So, but there is a side effect profile of these antipsychotics is that they cause a lot of metabolic abnormalities, like they will cause weight gain, and they will cause they will worsen their diabetes, or they will worsen their lipid profile, or those metabolic side effects were a big concern. So there is no third generation yet. Not very much used, and it is still an ongoing field of research. But right now for you guys, it will be enough to know that first generation and second generation, first generation most common side effect is EPS and they worsen the negative symptoms. Second generation, they are better at both positive and negative symptoms, but the most common side effect is metabolic abnormalities. So the common examples are olanzapine, clozapine, risperidone. There are many more, but these are most commonly used. Okay, this one will be an easy question. Risperidone is most commonly used to treat which of the following disorder? Most commonly, please note, it is most commonly dementia, depression, schizophrenia and OCD. So as I said, in MCQs, we have to choose the answer that is most appropriate, and in this case, obviously since I am taking a lecture on schizophrenia, so the answer is schizophrenia. Okay. As I said just now, risperidone is a second generation antipsychotic. It blocks both dopamine and serotonin receptors, and it is most commonly used in the treatment of schizophrenia. Here I would like to add that just because it is used most commonly in schizophrenia does not mean that it is used only in schizophrenia. Since other options are there, I'll just explain in brief. In dementia, you must have heard of dementia, maybe we'll cover it in a later class. There is loss of memory and executive functions, mostly in elderly. And there are also a lot of behavioral symptoms, in the sense that patient will not be, sleeping at night, patient will be agitated or violent and running away. So for these kind of symptoms also we use risperidone. But since the question is about most commonly, so answer is schizophrenia here. Then same goes about depression. Sometimes in very resistant cases of depression where there is no improvement, even with multiple antidepressants and mood stabilizers, we might add antipsychotics also, like risperidone. OCD, same goes for resistant OCD, like maybe in very resistant cases of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, when the SSRI and clomipramine is not working, we might add antipsychotic. But those are not the common indications. Common indication is schizophrenia. Delusion of doubles is found in schizoaffective disorder, Capgras syndrome, reactive psychosis, and paranoid schizophrenia. Now delusion, when you see delusion, you have the tendency to write, okay, it is delusion, so let me write schizophrenia. But that is not the correct answer. Anybody would like to attempt in terms? Delusion of doubles is seen in Capgras, okay. The answer is Capgras syndrome. What is Capgras syndrome? Capgras syndrome, person believes that a familiar person is replaced by an unfamiliar person. Like you will believe, suppose my friend is not my friend, he has been replaced by somebody else. Okay, so it is a kind of delusion. What is schizoaffective disorder? Disorder, delusions and hallucinations along with mood features are present. Like schizoaffective. Affective means mood. Schizo is delusions and hallucination, and affective will be mood features. They are both present. And the mood features are also severe enough, so that we can say that, okay, these mood features are also very severe and they will be present for a significant time of the total duration of the schizoaffective disorder. And what is paranoid schizophrenia? Paranoid schizophrenia patient characteristically presents with delusion of persecution. Like persecution means, like we had discussed in our last class, that somebody is, after me, they are trying to harm me, they are trying to threaten me, they are trying to do something bad to me. So those are mostly seen in paranoid schizophrenia. Like Capgras syndrome may also be seen in paranoid schizophrenia. Like the patient may believe that the patient's friend has been replaced by another person and that another person is also trying to harm him. So that is there, that okay, in paranoid schizophrenia also they will have Capgras syndrome. But since the options already had Capgras syndrome, so that will be more appropriate answer than paranoid schizophrenia. I'm just telling you these nuances in every question because that is how MCQ questions are mostly formed. They don't have clear-cut answers. You have to choose the most appropriate answer. Okay, schizophrenia mostly occurs in adolescents, children, old age, middle age. Again, please note the question contains the word mostly, most commonly, okay? And so, the answer is, anybody would like to say intern? Okay, let's see what is the answer. It is adolescence. Okay, most common age of onset of schizophrenia is adolescence. Why? There is this theory that when adolescence, our brain is developing as a from a baby. When we are growing up, our brain is developing, increasing in neurons and all. But also side by side there is pruning going on. Pruning is all the unnecessary neurons, they are being cut down inside our brain. Otherwise there would have been so many neurons who would have malfunctioned. Okay, so nature is great. Nature knows that okay, there are too many neurons and abnormal neurons, unnecessary neurons. These need to be cut down. So this pruning process is very active during adolescence. And there is this theory that because of abnormal pruning, like something is there, some abnormality in the genetics or in the environment plus genetics of that patient, because of which the pruning does not go as normal, as usual. So there is some abnormal pruning. As a result, the circuits, they have some abnormalities, and so schizophrenia starts manifesting in adolescence. That is one of the theories. And before schizophrenia there is onset, like last class I also talked about prodromal syndrome. So normally patients, they come to us maybe after 4 or 5 years of illness or 2 to 3 years of illness. And then when you take the history retrospectively, like past history when you take, the patient relatives will give this typical history of he was a nice kid and he used to go to school and he had friends, or he was shy. Both type of persons can have schizophrenia. And then slowly when he became a teenager, maybe 9th, 10th or 11th, slowly he withdrew from his surroundings. He started staying alone, or he started having abnormal experiences like people following him or people talking about him. And then slowly his studies, they deteriorated. He could not concentrate. He failed maybe, or even if he passed, he could not pass with as much marks as expected from a student of his caliber. And then he started having quarrels with others, like he used to accuse others, you are talking about me and you are looking at me. And then slowly the symptoms progressed. So these, you get a typical history that it all started in the adolescence. Not all patients, let me say, most patients. So the most common is adolescence, around 18 to 22, 23, like that. Childhood onset schizophrenia, which occurs before 13 years of age, is rare. Like the childhood onset will also have the same symptoms, delusion, hallucinations, catatonia behavior, It is rare, and also it is difficult to diagnose because small children, as it is, they have an overactive imagination. Okay, so it is very difficult to differentiate from the imagination from the actual hallucinations. Like a child will say, like, I have this friend, he comes to me, he talks to me. So how do you know if it is the child's imagination or if it is a delusion or hallucination? One of the clues is that if a child imagines a friend, most commonly it is a helpful friend. It is somebody the child plays with and likes to, have company with. So that is normal. But if the imaginary friend or imaginary voice is threatening, abusive, then most probably it is schizophrenia. But still it is very difficult to diagnose, and multiple sittings are needed, multiple persons should give the history, then only we can diagnose. Also, late onset schizophrenia is also seen, which occurs above 45 years of age. Also in males, there is only one peak of onset, adolescence, late adolescence and early 20s. In females, it is there, same. And also another peak will come around 35 years of age. I'm not exactly sure why that happens, but in females, there is 2 peaks, and in male there is 1 peak of onset of schizophrenia. Then we go to the next question. All of the following are the first rank symptoms of Snyder except hallucination, delusion, passivity phenomenon, elation. Would you like to answer? Elation. Okay. Let me see. Yes. So I think just Dr. Pooja had said about the first rank symptoms of Snyder. There was a time when these first rank symptoms were considered the hallmark of schizophrenia. Of course, DSM-5 does not say that these are the hallmark, but these are very common. Like as we had already discussed, thought insertion, feeling that somebody has inserted thoughts inside you. Thought withdrawal, feeling that your thoughts are being withdrawn from your brain. Thought broadcasting, that whatever I am thinking, it is being broadcasted, like my mind has become a radio or something. Audible thoughts is first person auditory hallucinations, I can hear what I am thinking. My thoughts are like, real voices. And voices commanding the person we have discussed, voices discussing about the person we have discussed, made, affect, volition and impulse, like my facial expressions, what I am doing, my impulses are not my own. And delusional perception will be sudden, there will be a perception, but the perception will be, it will be misidentified. So it is a delusional perception. And somatic passivity, like what I am doing, like I am moving my hand, I am not doing this. Okay, somebody else is making me do this, like that. So delusions in clear consciousness are seen in, okay. So the question here is delusion is clear. So clear consciousness is the catchword. So where is the clear consciousness? Is it dementia? Is it delirium? Is it neurosis? It is schizophrenia. So now since this is easy, since I am teaching schizophrenia, it is schizophrenia, but let me explain. Delusions, we know what are delusions, okay? False, fixed, firm belief that cannot be shaken. So they are also present in delirium and dementia, okay? But what is delirium? Delirium is a condition where there is fluctuating consciousness, and we'll go into detail in another class. Delirium may be caused by metabolic abnormalities, most common cause, maybe the electrolytes abnormality or renal failure or liver failure or heart failure, end stage cancer causes delirium. The patient will be in fluctuating consciousness, sometimes will be conscious, sometimes not, and there will be agitation and restlessness, and also delusions will be there. Delirium is also seen in alcohol withdrawal, like when a patient repeatedly consumes large amount of alcohol for a long time, he becomes dependent, and when he stops, he gets the withdrawal. So there also delirium is seen. And what is dementia? Like I said, dementia is primarily an abnormality in memory functions and executive functions. There also delusions are seen, but there is no, consciousness is not clear. What is consciousness? Clear consciousness means the patient is oriented, he is oriented to time, place, person. He is not in a confused state, or he is not in a, how when you get up early in the morning, sometimes it takes some time for us to orient ourselves. So that some time that it takes, that is the impaired consciousness. That is normal when you wake up, but delirium, dementia, it is there, okay? But in schizophrenia, it is not there. Schizophrenia patients are as alert and oriented as you and I. So still they have delusions. So delusions in clear consciousness, the answer will be schizophrenia. Delusions are absent in neurosis. Neurosis term is actually an old term we don't use much now. Neurosis means the psychiatric disorder in which touch with reality is intact. Like we have not lost touch with reality, okay? Patient, like I'll give you example of neurosis. Depression is a neurosis, and OCD is a neurosis. Anxiety disorders are neurosis. The patient is very much in touch with reality. The brain knows what is real and what is, not real, like us. So they mostly don't have delusions. But then of course there are certain exceptions, like depression is a neurosis we say, but in severe depression there might be delusion. So it is not an all or none phenomena, but you have to choose the most appropriate answer. Then the next is Bleuler's 4 A's of schizophrenia include all except autism, automatism, affective disturbance, loosening of association, ambivalence. Hinton, would you like to say? Let me see. Okay, the answer is automatism. So, what is Bleuler's 4 A's? 4 is of schizophrenia. Again, this is not a typical DSM-5. This is, but Blurer had given this 4 is of schizophrenia. And the first one is autism. This autism should not be confused with autism spectrum disorder, but here the autism has a similar meaning. It means the patient is, not able to relate. Mostly in autism, the main problem is interpersonal relation is not there. Patient has no social nuances. Like when we are talking, suppose I'm talking to somebody, I will notice the other person's facial expressions. I'll notice the other person's body language. Then I will have an idea if the other person is interested in my speech or not, if he is giving me attention or he is getting angry. Accordingly, I will change my speech. We relate with people. It is a give and take relationship. But in schizophrenia, that is impaired. Like the patient is not able to read the facial expression and gestures and body language and social nuances of other people. Okay. Ambivalence, as we had discussed in last class, ambivalence is confusion. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Because the patient in schizophrenia, this confusion is a major factor. They are unable to take decisions. Some little bit of confusion is there in everybody's life, but still at the end we do something. We are not always, left in confusion state. But ambivalence, there is a lot of ambivalence and patients find it very, very difficult to take decisions. And so they are unable to take decisions most of the time. Loosening of association. When we take have a conversation or say, give a speech like I am talking to you now, all the things that I am saying, they are making a logical connection. The first sentence has a connection to the second has a connection to the third, and overall there is a connection and there is a flow. Like you can understand, okay, this doctor is talking about MCQs in schizophrenia and she is discussing different questions. So you are able to understand what I am saying. But when I will say things which will not have an association, like sometimes I will say one sentence and then another sentence from completely another topic. And in severe cases, I will say one word here and one word there, and you will be like, what is she talking about? You will not be able to understand. And that is very classic of schizophrenia, loosening of association. Affective features. Affective features is depression, elation. As I said, the depression, elation can be present in schizophrenia also. So those are the affective features. Now, the next question is, in schizophrenia, false is A, third person auditory hallucination, B, inappropriate emotions, C, sustained mood changes, and D, formal thought disorder. So the answer is sustained mood changes. Again, I will say this is the most appropriate among all these choices, okay? It's not that in schizophrenia there will never be mood change. There will be, but a third person auditory hallucination, inappropriate emotions, and formal thought disorder are more characteristics of schizophrenia, and sustained mood change is more characteristics of bipolar disorder or depression. So auditory hallucinations are characteristics of schizophrenia, as we have already discussed. Like there will be a lot of, commanding type of hallucination, first person hallucination, running commentary kind of hallucination. And behavioral disturbances can manifest as emotions which are inappropriate to the surroundings. The patient may have, labile effect. He may laugh suddenly, cry suddenly without any provocation, without any, stimulus. There will be there. And sustained mood changes are present in mood disorders. Okay. Now, Van Gogh syndrome is seen in mania, depression, schizophrenia, and OCD. So obviously the answer is schizophrenia. Now what is this Van Gogh syndrome? Van Gogh syndrome is self-mutilation. Like they will mutilate self, and obviously patient with a clear consciousness or patient with intact reality testing, mostly they don't mutilate self. So it is also, you can understand that the patient is psychotic. That's why there is self-mutilation. Now schizophrenia with poor prognosis is paranoid, hebephremic, simple, or catatonic. So the answer is simple. According to ICD, schizophrenia was divided into the following types. Paranoid, we all know what is paranoid schizophrenia, right? There will be delusion of persecution and hallucinations that are, threatening, abusive. Person will feel that people are against me, somebody is plotting against me. And hebephrenic, a simple schizophrenia has predominantly negative symptoms, okay? There will be simple deterioration of the patient. That is why it is called simple schizophrenia, but that is nothing simple about it. There will be slow deterioration in executive functions, in adjustment, in patient's work, study. So patient will slowly deteriorate. It is like the patient is slowly becoming very, for lack of a better word, I will say, like a vegetable, like the patient executive function will be markedly dull, okay. There will be predominant negative symptoms, early age of onset, and there will be poor prognosis. So the more early is the onset of schizophrenia, the poorer the prognosis, okay. And catatonia schizophrenia we have already discussed. So the next question is similar to this, related to this. All of the following are associated with better prognosis in schizophrenia, except late onset, married, negative symptoms, acute onset, okay. So all are associated with better prognosis except what? Negative symptoms. As I said in the previous slide, so let's see which are the good prognostic indicators. Good prognosis is seen in late onset, obvious precipitating factors, okay, because if there is an obvious precipitating factor and the precipitating factor goes away, so the schizophrenia might, resolve or, become less severe. And late onset, obviously, because the brain has already developed. So after full development, full maturity, if schizophrenia is there, it will have a better prognosis. Poor prognosis is young onset and no precipitating features. Acute onset has a good prognosis. That suddenly patient will become violent or, hallucination, delusion will start. Poor prognosis is insidious onset. Like I said in simple schizophrenia, slowly patient will deteriorate, and it will not be sudden, it will not be overnight. It is not like today the patient is fine and tomorrow morning he has gone into schizophrenia. It is slowly over years. If you ask the history, no, the patient relative cannot pinpoint, okay, this is the day it started. They cannot, okay. That is poor prognosis, insidious onset, slow onset. Then good pre-morbid personality is a good prognostic features. Obviously, the patient is well adjusted, it will be good. Poor pre-morbid personality is poor prognosis. Pre-morbid personality means personality before the disease started, okay. Mood disorder symptoms have a better prognosis, and withdrawn autistic behavior have a poorer prognosis. Family history of mood disorders has a better prognosis, and family history of schizophrenia has a poor prognosis. Now this is compared to, see, if the patient has no family history, that is the best prognosis. Then mood disorders, that is the second best, and family history of schizophrenia is the least best. Married is good prognosis because obviously there will be family support. Single, divorced or widowed is poor prognosis. Good support system and is good prognosis, obviously. Poor support system is poor prognosis. Positive symptoms are good prognosis. Delusion, hallucination, they are good prognosis because there is not much cognitive impairment. And poor prognosis is negative symptoms. Amotivation, alogia, apathy, like that. Antipsychotics drugs is clomipramine, carbamazepine, sodium valproate, chlorpromazine. Anybody would like to say? Chlorpromazine. Like, I'll be frank, in my MBBS days, I used to be very confused among clomipramine, carbamazepine and chlorpromazine because they sound so much similar and there is this ion in the end. So you have to be careful here. Chlorpromazine is a typical antipsychotic, like we have discussed. It was the first antipsychotic drug synthesized in 1952. Okay. Carbamazepine is an anti-epileptic drug used in psychiatry as a third-line agent for bipolar mood disorder. Like the first line will be valproate and lithium. Mostly carbamazepine is used in epilepsy and most commonly in complex partial seizures. Sodium valproate is an anti-epileptic drug. It is used as a first-line agent in the treatment of bipolar mood disorder. Clomipramine is a tricyclic antidepressant and drug of choice for treatment of OCD. I hope that is clear. So, drug used in schizophrenia include all except haloperidol, olanzapine, imipramine, risperidone. We have discussed this already, all the drugs. So, the answer is imipramine. Haloperidol, risperidone and olanzapine are antipsychotic agents. They are used in the treatment of schizophrenia. Haloperidol is first generation, risperidone and olanzapine are second generation. Imipramine is a tricyclic antidepressant. It is most commonly used in the treatment of depression. Also in nocturnal illnesses, like children or adults who are passing urine at night, they also used imipramine, like older children, not small children. All of the following are considered to be negative symptoms of schizophrenia except apathy, avolition, auditory hallucination, affective flattening. Like we have already discussed, the answer is C, auditory hallucinations. Negative symptoms of schizophrenia are apathy, not interested in anything, avolition, not doing anything, alogia, decreased speech, asociality, not being, not willing to talk or be friends with others, and affective flattening. Like we have discussed, the effect will be very flat. There will be no changes in facial expression when you are speaking. There will be like a blank slate, like kind of thing. Auditory hallucinations, features of affect, delusion of persecution occur in. Answer is easy, schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is characterized by auditory hallucinations and delusion and sometimes affective features like mood features. In depression, there is sadness of mood, yes, loss of interest in pleasurable activities and sleep disturbances. We'll be covering depression in details in later classes. In history or conversion disorder, there are functional neurological symptoms, but there will be no organic cause. Like the patient will suddenly say, I cannot see, I have gone blind. Or the patient will suddenly become mute. Or the patient will suddenly be unable to walk. Okay, but there is no organic cause. It is because of a psychological disturbance. It is a functional symptoms, but no organic cause, no pathology in the brain. In anxiety neurosis, there are physical and psychological symptoms of autonomic nervous system hyperactivity. There will be, palpitation, tremor, sweating. Okay. Snyder's first rank symptoms seen in, like we've already discussed the first rank symptoms, delusion, hallucination, schizoid personality and schizophrenia. See, first rank symptoms are seen in is the question, okay? The question is not what are the first rank symptoms. So the answer will be schizophrenia. So again, I'll just repeat what are the first rank symptoms. Thought insertion, thought withdrawal, thought broadcasting, audible thoughts, voices commanding the person, second person auditory hallucination, third person auditory hallucination, made, effect, volition and impulse, delusional perception and somatic passivity. Then the final question is, infidelity and jealousy involving spouse is the thought content of which disorder? Like my spouse is not, faithful to me, he or she is having relationship with other people. So the answer is Othello syndrome. Now Othello is a novel written by Shakespeare. In that, Othello is the person who is suspecting that the wife is not faithful to her and in the end he murders her. So the syndrome name has been taken from there, like people who are jealous and who suspect their spouses. Othello syndrome is delusion of infidelity and morbid jealousy. Cabrera syndrome is delusion of misidentification, like we discussed, in which person believes that a familiar person is replaced by an unfamiliar person. In hypochondriacal paranoia, patient has a delusional belief that he is suffering from a severe illness. Like how much you say that no, you do not have an illness, or they will be convinced. Like they will be convinced, I have cancer. You give them CT scan, MRI, all kinds of reports. No, you do not have. They will change the doctor, but they will not change their belief. Okay. De Clermont syndrome is delusion of love or erotomania, in which most commonly person believes that a person of higher socio-economic status is in love with her or him. Like it most commonly happens, celebrity, people stalk celebrity, they will harass them, they will follow them, then they will say, okay, that celebrity loves me, but they are not able to express their love because of society. But if I keep following her or following him, and one day he or she will express his love. It is very common in Western countries, you must have heard in news. So that is delusion of love or erotomania or de Clermont syndrome. So that concludes our lecture. Thank you.